63 million people watched the clip inside 48 hours. Only one of them was supposed to be in that room. By Sunday morning, the screenshots were everywhere. By Sunday afternoon, 3 former White House communications directors had given statements without being asked. By Monday, the dinner's organizing committee had released a 4-paragraph response that answered none of the questions anyone was actually asking. All of it, every statement, every screenshot, every unanswered press inquiry, traces back to a single moment on a Saturday night in April when Stephen Colbert walked through a door that a sitting president of the United States had tried to seal shut. The Washington Hilton has hosted the White House Correspondents Association dinner for decades. The chandeliers in the main ballroom are the same ones that have hung above every president, every press secretary, every comedian who ever stood at that podium and told the most powerful people in the country things they did not want to hear. The room has a specific weight to it on dinner nights. The kind of weight that comes not from grandeur but from accumulated consequence, from every speech that landed wrong, and every joke that landed too right, and every silence that followed both. On this particular Saturday, the weight was different, heavier in the wrong places. The florists who arranged the centerpieces later noted they had never seen so many empty chairs reserved but not filled before the doors officially opened. A catering supervisor counted 11 place settings at the administration's traditionally assigned section that remained untouched from the fish course through dessert. The administration had sent its instructions 4 days earlier. Cabinet chiefs of staff had been assembled. A directive had been issued. Administration officials were not to attend. The message was precise, institutional, and delivered through proper channels, which is the particular kind of pressure that leaves no fingerprints. Nobody could point to a specific band. Nobody could produce a document with Colbert's name underlined. The scaffolding of it was invisible. But everyone in the room on Saturday night understood exactly what it was and exactly who it was aimed at. Colbert understood it too. He arrives through the East Corridor entrance at 6:47 p.m., 40 minutes before doors open to the general attendee pool. He is wearing a tuxedo that fits the way tuxedos fit men who wear them without thinking about wearing them. No security detail, no CBS publicist flanking him. He carries a single index card in his left hand. Not notes, not jokes, but a name and a table number written in black ink. He reads it once, tucks it into his breast pocket, and walks into the ballroom the way water moves into a room it has always belonged in. The maitre d' assigned to the east entrance is 26 years old and has worked 4 previous dinners. She later tells a colleague she has never seen someone enter a room that quietly and still make everyone in it aware that something had changed. Colbert doesn't pause at the threshold, doesn't survey the room, doesn't make eye contact with the nearest camera position. He moves straight to his table, sits, unfolds his napkin, and waits. 3 tables away, 2 senior White House communications staffers who arrived in defiance of the administration's guidance exchange a look. One of them sets down his water glass with the exaggerated care of a person who needs something to do with his hands. The other simply watches Colbert sit, tucks his chin, and says nothing. At 7:03 p.m., the room is 40% full. By 7:22 p.m., it is nearly capacity. By 7:31 p.m., every working camera in the Hilton ballroom has framed Colbert at least once. He has not moved. He has not spoken to the press. He is eating a bread roll with the complete attention of a man who has made his statement and is done making it. Then the lights drop to performance level. The history between Stephen Colbert and this room is not incidental. In 2006, he stood at this same podium and delivered 17 minutes of material directly at a sitting president. Material so precise, so structurally devastating in its sustained satirical attack that half the room went silent before he finished. The cameras documented it. The silence documented it. The subsequent week of media coverage documented what it means when a comedian decides to use the tools of his craft not to entertain power, but to interrogate it in front of power, with power watching him do it. Bush sat 6 feet away. Colbert never broke character. The room never recovered its equilibrium. That was 2006. Trump has never attended this dinner as president. Not in his first term, not at the start of his second. What Trump had done, consistently and with increasing institutional formality, was try to ensure that the people around him didn't attend either, and that the people who might hold a microphone and say something true were systematically made to feel that the room was hostile territory. In 2019, he ordered the boycott directly. In 2025, a comedian was dropped from hosting duties after the White House made its displeasure known. Each year, the scaffolding grew more elaborate, the pressure more architectural, the message more precise. This room belongs to us now, even when we're not in it. Colbert had been told, through channels that left no written record, that his presence at this year's dinner would be noted, that it would be remembered. that there were conversations happening at regulatory levels, conversations about CBS, about licensing, about the particular scrutiny that attaches to broadcasters who are perceived as hostile, and that attending the dinner would not help those conversations. He came anyway, and then he stood up. The introduction is brief. A correspondent from a regional paper who has covered 3 administrations reads Colbert's name from a prepared card, keeps her voice neutral, and steps back from the microphone the way people step back from something that might be hot. Colbert crosses the room from his table to the podium without rushing. He adjusts the microphone once, down, not up, places both hands flat on the podium surface, looks at the room. He doesn't open with a joke. "I want to say something before I say anything else," he begins. His voice fills the room at precisely the volume the room requires, not amplified beyond the space, not pressed into it. Clinical, deliberate. "I was asked, in terms that were unofficial, but completely legible, not to be here tonight." He pauses. The silence in the ballroom is the specific silence of people who knew this was coming and still aren't ready for it. "I wrote it down when it happened, because I believe in documentation. I had it reviewed by 2 attorneys, and then I booked my travel." A man in the 7th row, a senior editor at a wire service who has covered White House press relations for 19 years, lowers his head and looks at the tablecloth. He stays like that for 4 seconds. When he raises his head, his expression has not changed, but the set of his jaw has. Colbert reaches under the podium. He places a single sheet of paper on the surface. Not a folder, not a binder. 1 page, the kind of density that comes from having said only what needs saying and removing everything else. It is a timeline, printed in clean columns. Dated entries running from October of last year to 3 weeks before this dinner. Each entry is labeled with a category: informal communication, regulatory inquiry, license review correspondence, meeting request, declined, meeting request, accepted, internal memo, obtained via FOIA. The room reads it the way rooms read things they expected to find alarming and discover are more alarming than expected. "This isn't about me," Colbert says. His voice drops slightly. Not softer, but more specific, the way a camera drops focus to isolate a single detail. "I have a show, I have a network, I have lawyers, and I have, apparently, a fairly high tolerance for paperwork." There is no laughter. Nobody is laughing. "But there are reporters in this room tonight. I can see them, I know some of their names, who have had versions of this conversation without any of those protections, who got the informal communication and had nothing to put behind it." He looks at the room. "This dinner exists because of them, not because of me." He slides the page to the edge of the podium where the cameras can frame it. Then a door behind the dais opens. She is a former White House correspondent for a regional television affiliate. 12 years covering the executive branch, present at 4 State of the Union addresses, credentialed without interruption until 14 months ago, when her outlet received a letter from the White House Communications Office that described her as someone whose editorial posture made continued press pool access inadvisable. The letter used the word inadvisable 3 times in 2 paragraphs. She kept the letter. She has it with her tonight. She sits in the chair to the left of the podium. She does not have notes. She speaks with the controlled flatness of someone who has been preparing this particular statement for 14 months and is now simply delivering it. "The first letter arrived on a Tuesday," she says. "I remember because I had a briefing that afternoon that I had been approved to cover 2 days earlier. I received the letter at 10:14 a.m. My credentials were suspended by 10:47 a.m. She looks at her hands. 33 minutes. I counted. I've counted a lot of things since then." She unfolds the letter, holds it up. The cameras push in. The room is completely silent. The particular silence of people who are watching something true arrive in a place built for truth. The word inadvisable appears here, and here. She points to each instance without drama. No explanation, no appeals process named, no regulatory citation, just that word, 3 times. Colbert says nothing. He is standing to the right of the podium, slightly back, giving the room to her entirely. She refolds the letter, places it on the podium surface, and then, very quietly, "I stayed quiet for 14 months because I was afraid of what speaking would cost. But I was more afraid of what it meant if I never spoke." She does not cry. Her fingers, gripped together in her lap before she stood, leave white pressure marks that fade slowly. A woman at the press table in the 2nd row covers her mouth with both hands, not quickly, slowly, the way a person moves when they are trying not to make the moment about their own reaction. 2 seats down, a man who has not moved in 4 minutes begins to applaud. Hands meeting, once, twice, and then others joining. Not a standing ovation, not the cascading noise of an entertainment crowd, but the deliberate, measured sound of people who understand what they just heard and are using the only tool they have to say so. Then, a second person walks from the far side of the dais. He is a media law attorney who has handled First Amendment cases at the federal level for 22 years. He carries a binder. He sits. He opens it to a tabbed section near the middle and does not preamble. Between January of last year and this month, he says, 17 journalists credentialed to cover the executive branch received informal communications from White House offices that either questioned their access or referenced regulatory proceedings relevant to their parent companies. He turns a page. Of those 17, 11 reduced their coverage of specific subject areas within 60 days of receiving communication. I'm not asserting causation. I'm presenting the scaffolding. He looks up. The scaffolding of a system that doesn't need to threaten anyone directly. It just needs to be visible. Visible is sufficient. Visible is, in fact, the point. The thematic anchor word hits the room differently the second time. A journalist near the back of the press section writes something on her notepad. Not a quote, but the word itself circled twice. The structure of what has been built, brick by invisible brick, over 14 months, is now on a table in the Washington Hilton ballroom, with cameras aimed at it and 2,000 people reading the dimensions. Trump is not in this room. He has never been in this room during his presidencies, but his administration's architecture is everywhere in it tonight. In the empty seats, in the suspended credentials, in the 17 informal communications that left no fingerprints, in the word inadvisable repeated 3 times on a letter that took 33 minutes to end a 12-year career. Colbert steps back to the microphone. You don't ban a person from a room by locking the door, he says. His voice is flat, factual. The room holds its breath. You ban them by making everyone watching understand that the door could be locked, that the lock exists, that someone is standing near it. He pauses. I'm standing in this room tonight. That's all I came to say. He steps back from the podium. He doesn't add anything. He walks to his seat. The room doesn't explode. It doesn't roar. It does something rarer. It absorbs. 1,200 people processing the same information at the same speed. And the sound that rises is not applause or dissent, but something closer to recognition. The sound a room makes when it identifies something it has always suspected and is now looking at directly. At 12:08 a.m., a senior national security correspondent for a major broadcast network receives an encrypted message from a source she has protected for 9 years. A source with verified, documented access to White House communications planning. The message is 4 sentences. It confirms that the informal guidance issued to Colbert's team originated in a specific office, was reviewed at a specific level, and was deliberately structured to avoid any language that could constitute a legally actionable threat. The source's final sentence reads, "The scaffolding was deliberate. The deliberateness was the message. I'm not able to stay quiet about the deliberateness." The correspondent verifies the source's identity against prior confirmed correspondence. She begins making calls at 12:11 a.m. By 1 a.m., the clip of the credentials letter being held up, 3 visible instances of inadvisable, cameras tight on the page, has been viewed 11 million times. It has been segmented into 7 independent pieces, each spreading at a different speed. The timeline page from the podium is being cross-referenced in real time against public FOIA records by 3 separate investigative teams. News graphics departments rebuild it with their own annotations. Trump's response arrives at 1:47 a.m. Colbert is a third-rate talent who couldn't fill a room without a government subsidy. The post is screenshotted before it finishes loading and placed beside the image of a full ballroom, every seat taken, and a former correspondent holding a letter that took 33 minutes to end her access. The juxtaposition requires nothing else. No caption, no context. The images carry the entire argument by existing in the same frame. A floor producer who spent 14 years at CBS and worked 46 episodes with Colbert told a colleague the following morning that she had never watched a room go that quiet and stay that quiet for that long. It wasn't stunned, she said. It was deliberate, like everyone decided at the same time to make sure they heard every word. Months later, the forums are still running. The 17 journalists, the 33 minutes, the word inadvisable 3 times in a letter that nobody has officially acknowledged writing. No correction issued, no retraction filed. The question of who signed it, who reviewed it, who approved the language, who decided that inadvisable was the right word, used the right number of times, has not been answered. The scaffolding is still standing. The people who built it are still in the building. The door is still near the lock. But 2,000 people saw a woman hold up the letter in the Washington Hilton ballroom, and the cameras were all running, and none of the footage has been disputed. Some rooms cannot be banned from. The people who understand that are the ones who keep showing up. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next door they try to lock, that story is already in progress.